This is how we do it.
This is how we do it.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
This is how we do it.
This.
Okay, welcome to another segment of This Is How I Do It. I'm IT Beast, and we're going to be going over the final chapter in our three-part series on EXSI Server on VMware Player. Part 3, we're going to be dealing on upgrading EXSI Server from version 5, could be 5.01, 5.1, even base 5.5, to the newest and greatest version EXSI Server, which is at this time 5.5 Update 1. Alright, since we're at part 3, a lot of this should have already been done in part 1, but in case it has, I'm just going to briefly touch over it. You will need to have an EXSI server 5X between versions 5.0, 5.5 as I mentioned, and then you also need to make sure you download the newest EXSI installer of 5.5 Update 1. And of course, if a higher one is available when you see this video, then download that one instead. Next, as I've been stressing in all 3 parts of my video series, make sure that you download the client versions of the vSphere clients of whichever version of EXSI Server you are using. So in this case, we're going to need 2 versions. We're going to need, for whatever version of EXSI Server you're going to download for the first part, and then we're going to need the same version of that, and of course the most up-to-date version of 5.5 client that matches what you're downloading with server 5.5 Update 1, which is still 5.5. No big deal. Alright, so the VMware Player versions haven't really changed. You must make sure that, of course, that you're doing this all on a 64-bit machine, because EXSI Server will only work on 64-bit OSs and hardware. VMware Converter Standalone, it's optional, but you may want to use this for backing up your important virtuals. I know this is only a lab, but just in case you have something that's kind of important, it's always good before you do an upgrade of any kind, even through this. I guarantee you basically 99.9% of the time is painless, that you want to back it up. So in this case, if you do not have, say, backup software for your virtual machines, using Converter Standalone as a reverse of what we did in part 2 will work out great. So instead of converting from, say, VMware Workstation to VMware Infrastructure, you do the opposite way, VMware Infrastructure to VMware Workstation. In this case, you would have a copy of said virtual machine. Okay, it may take you 10 or 15 minutes depending for each virtual machine, but if they're important ones, this is something you may want to consider. And of course, in this demonstration, we're also going to be doing with a guest virtual machine already in our EXSI server to show you that this can be done with them on there. However, as I said before, just make sure you back them up. Alright, host requirements are basically the same in from the last 2 parts. Hasn't really changed. So I'll just have you look it over again. Just remember, since we are doing the actual EXSI server, that you use at least a 64-bit operating system. Alright, let's get down and let's start the upgrade. Alright, we're at the desktop now. We're going to start our upgrade process, but before we start the actual upgrade, I'm going to show you how you can use VMware Converter as a backup tool in case you do not have any backup software available to you, because backup software is not cheap. So, but I feel this is very important for if you do have virtual machines that you do need to have taken off, just in case. I mean, like I've said, I know for a fact 99.9% it's going to work. However, you can always never plan on that WTF factor. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to shoot up the converter screen. Alright, we'll click Convert Machines like we did in part 2. Alright, so what we're going to do is we are going to choose, instead of VMware Workstation, or other virtual machine, we're going to choose VMware Infrastructure Machine as our source type this time. So since we are doing that, it's now asking us, okay, what server do you want to pull the source from? There's our server IP. Go ahead and type in the necessary password and of course account name. And then we'll go out and we'll log on to our EXSI server. Alright, so it's showing you, hey, this is the virtual machines I currently have, and of course I only have the one, again for just demonstration purposes. So we'll pretend this is the very high priority virtual machine that we can't live without, and we'll hit next. So it's now retrieving the information from that, and it's going to get ready for setting up for our destination source, which will be your VMware workstation or local PC. So okay, here we go. Now it's asking, okay, what destination type you want. In this case, it's on that already, VMware workstation or other virtual machine. So you have a choice, or you could even send it to another. Let's say you do have, say, 2 or 3 EXSI servers in your farm. If you just want to buffalo it off to another EXSI server that, let's say you don't have vMotion, because you know that's an expensive option, you can use converter in order to do that. So we'll click on workstation for now, because we'll just have it go to our local PC. Alright, and it's asking you the product type version do you want it on. Do you want it on 8 hardware, 7 hardware, Fusion, Player? Well, Player and Workstation are practically the same, so it doesn't really matter. So we'll go ahead and we'll choose Workstation for now. Or if you do want to use 6, you can choose Player 6. Again, between Workstation and Player, there's no big difference. You can even change the name again. If you don't want the name that's currently named, you can change it to something else. Alright, next is the location. Where do you want to store this? So you go to your computer, you choose a hard drive. In my case, I'm going to choose virtual machines and hit OK. Now this doesn't have to be the local hard drive. You can also set up on a share of another computer. So you can go whack my server, whack, and then virtual machines, and you can set it up that way. And we'll click next. Alright, just like in part 2, it's going to give you a list. Okay, is there anything you want to change? And we're just going to leave everything defaulted. And if you want to put more cores, whatever, or whatnot, you can, but again, we're just going to leave everything on default. And then we would hit next, and then they'll give us, like before, a preliminary report of what's going to happen to it, and then you would click finish, and then it would go ahead and convert your virtual machine from EXSI Server back to a PC or whatever destination you choose. But we're going ahead and going to hit cancel for now. We'll hit yes. And we're going to go ahead and exit out of this. Alright, we are now back on the desktop, and we are going to bring up our EXSI server, which is currently playing on our VMware Player. And then we are going to shut it down. So we're going to do that. We're going to click F12. As you can see, our account name's already in there, so we'll just put our root password. Hit enter. Okay, as you can see, it's giving us a choice to either restart or shut down, and we are going to press F2 to shut down. Alright, so now we're going to reopen our virtual machine. Click on the EXSI Server virtual machine. We're going to click Edit. And we're going to come over to where it says CD DVD IDE. Make sure it's an ISO image file. hit browse. We'll go to the folder where we currently have our 5.5 ISO installer update. Click on that and we will click open. And that is now inserted into the ISO DVD drive. We'll press OK. Alright, so now we are ready to power on our EXSI Server VMware Player virtual machine. Now, just to make you aware that if it doesn't boot off of your ISO image, you may have to go into the VMware Player's or your virtual machine's BIOS settings and have your CD-ROM be the first device it boots off of. And that's very easily done. Once you start to play the virtual machine, you see the VMware logo. Make sure you're entered into the VMware virtual machine and then press F2 and that will take you into the BIOS. So we're going to go ahead now and start with playing the virtual machine. Alright, as you can see, it is recognized that there is a new DVD in there and it's going to boot off of the standard installer, which as you saw is 5.5. As you can see with the splash screen, it is now reading the 5.5 installer ISO, and if you look at the, like I say again at the top, the information is right there. Your 5.0 is still, as of right now, is still sitting on your virtual hard drive. It hasn't gone anywhere. Just like when you originally installed the 5.0, it is going through and it's loading up its install files. Alright, so it's like with 5.0, it's telling you, hey, welcome to the 5.5 install screen. After we've looked that over, we're going to go ahead and hit enter. And of course, we're under the silly license agreement. Yes or no, do or don't, it's all up to you. But for the sake of demonstration, we're going to hit F11. Alright, it sees that you have a 100 gig hard drive. It's got through scan it, and again it will scan anything on your server / computer, whatnot, to make sure it's got all the drives accounted for. If there's a USB key there, it will show that too. We'll hit enter. Okay, it's now informing you, say, guess what? I found a copy of EXSI Server already on your virtual hard drive. So it's giving you 3 options of what you can do. Now, the thing I said about the USB key or whatnot, if that's plugged in there and you just refer to that one to be upgraded, you won't see these options. But since I installed it on the actual virtual hard drive or the hard drive itself, you're going to see it. So you're given 3 options. You can either do a very basic, what's called in-place upgrade of the EXSI Server. What happens is the EXSI Server only software will be upgraded. So for your 5.0 will then become 5.5. Your data stores in your virtual machines should not be touched, and it should be there exactly the way you had it when you bring it back up. The next option is it will install a brand new version of EXSI Server over your existing EXSI Server software. What this does is any previous settings that you had on there previously will be gone and you will start at default. And again, as you can see, the option to have your virtual machines not touch is still there. And option 3 is what I call your 0-day option. Is when basically both things are completely gone over and it is a brand new, I just got it out of the store, freaking EXSI Server. So as I've done at work and I've done for these tutorial videos, we're just going to do the basic. We're going to upgrade the basic EXSI Server with the pre-existing settings that I've already have in there, and of course preserve the virtual machine data store. So with that, we're now going to hit enter. Alright, It's saying what errors were found. Once again, we're seeing that it doesn't detect hardware virtualization like we did in part 1. Again, this is something you can safely ignore, because since this is a virtual machine within a virtual machine, it doesn't sense the BIOS hardware that virtualization is enabled, so we can safely go ahead and hit enter to continue. Okay, so now that it's done, everything is done in scanning. It's letting you know, hey, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to upgrade your stuff to 5.5. There's no turning back, so we're going to go ahead now and hit F11. Be sure that you have all the options that you want it set correctly. Alright, it's now the upgrade is now completed. As you can see, it's done successfully. Now what it's done here, since we are using a free version of the key for our hypervisor, it's put it back into a 60-day mode. Do not panic. All you need to redo is re-enter your free edition key back into the vSphere client when we are finished here. Now, with commercial keys, like I've done at the data center at my work, they do not ask you for this. So that's nice for commercial anyways, but for free they do ask you for it. It's no big deal. You just go in there, it takes like maybe, 10 seconds and you're done. So we're going to go ahead and reboot, and we're just going to check over our configurations. All of them should be there from part 1. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to reboot. Okay, real quick, as you see this splash screen, as we're rebooting up, it is now reading off of the hard drive for EXSI Server 5.5 and is no longer 5.0. Alright, so we are now back on the main splash screen for your EXSI Server, and as I pointed out again, it is now reading 5.5. There's the kernel build, or I'm sorry, yeah, the VMware kernel release build, which is way different from what you had before. Now, you probably could have done this in vSphere client, but I always feel better checking it in the machine itself just to make sure it looks right. Now, this is probably the 1 or 2 times, the other one being just when we just upgraded it, and the second time now to check the settings that we will actually be in our VMware EXSI server, because after that, once again, life happens at the vSphere client, and if you're lucky enough and can afford vCenter or the vCenter web client. So we're going to go ahead and hit F2, and we're going to put our root in and our password. Okay, so we don't need to worry about the password. Go down to Configure Management Network. As you can see, your IP is still good, but we'll hit enter to check everything else. Go down to where it says IP configuration, and your IP configuration from part 1 is still in there, so that's a good thing. This is still disabled. Here's your DNS configuration, which hasn't changed since part 1. And of course, you know there's nothing in the DNS suffixes because we're not running DNS at this time. So with that in mind, we're done. We haven't changed anything, so we're just going to hit escape to get out. If you did change something, then you need to hit enter. Don't need to restart the management because we didn't change anything. We can, just for laughing giggles, we can test the management network. There you go. Then we'll hit enter, and it's going to test to make sure we can ping ourselves, which we are. Alright, hit enter again. And then other than that, that's it. So we just verified all our settings. They are good. So we'll just hit escape to log out. Alright, we're back on the main splash screen, and now we'll do like we did in part 1. We're just going to put this thing to bed. And we're going to go from there back to our desktop. Alright, we are now back at our desktop, and we're going to enter our vSphere client. So we're going to double click on that. It is currently running the 5.0 version of the client, and I'm showing you this for a reason. Go ahead and enter our passwords. And we will hit enter. Alright, so now it's going saying, hey, you're running 5.0 here, I'm talking to a 5.5 EXSI server. I can't talk to it right now. So we can do one of two things. One, if you are connected to the internet, you can do this option right here, which you can go ahead and run the installer to retrieve the necessary files to upgrade it to a 5.5 client. However, it would also still be backward compatible to talk to other 5.0 EXSI servers if you have it. Now, if you're in a, say, closed off area where you have no connection to the internet whatsoever, guess what? Yeah, that's right. You're going to have to uninstall this and install the 5.5 client manually. So in this case, though, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to run the installer since we are on the internet. Okay, so now it's telling us that it's temporarily saved the necessary update files in the local directory, and in order to update we have to go ahead and press OK, and it will install those packages and then restart the vSphere client connection to our EXSI server. So we're going to hit OK. Alright, we're going to hit click OK. As you know from part 1, this looks very familiar. Okay, now it's going to go ahead and install 5.5 on our host machine. Of course, we hit the I accept. As before, you can change the directory or you can leave it as default. We'll leave it as default. And we will click install. Okay, we are now finished. So we're going to go ahead and click finish. Alright, so now that it's installed, we're going to go ahead and click on the icon again. And you can see it's a little bit different this time. Since we are on 5.5, there are a vast new variety of features which are now in EXSI Server 5.5. However, the vSphere client itself has now become more of a legacy application, and VMware is moving over to its vCenter web client in order to do most of the management of its EXSI servers. So it will work. It'll look exactly like it did in 5.0, but a lot of the different features like, say, cloning or making a template and all that wonderful stuff will not be available in our vSphere client. Doesn't mean it won't get used, because this is a great alternative in case your vCenter web client goes down. At least you have some way to talk to your EXSI server. So it's just giving you a heads up on that. So once again, we will log in. Hopefully this time with a little better success now that we got the right client on. Hit enter. Alright, so we are now back into our vSphere client. If you look towards our left hand corner near the top, it is now saying it's a 5.5.0. Let's go to our virtual machines. And guess what? There is our virtual machine. As you can see, it looks like it survived the upgrade. Just to verify, we will go ahead and we will power it on. And we will open the console. Now, the most that probably will end up having to be done to this virtual machine is you will have to upgrade the VMware tools, which I'm not going to actually do for sake of time, but I will show you real quick on how to do it. Very simple. You just click on VM, go to Guest, and you'll hit Install Upgrade VMware Tools. Of course, you want to do this once you're in the actual client virtual machine. And then it will go out and it will install the new tools for you. So we're going to go ahead and head out of that for right now. I'm just booting this up to show you that it will still work fine. I'm always more on the cautious side. I'd rather we've, taken that backup with the VMware converter than not to have done it, because if something had gone wrong, you don't want to be the one crying because you've lost the most important piece of data in the world that ran off of that old virtual machine. Alright, so we're going to go, and as you can see, guess what? It works. Click Start. We'll open something up real quick. Like I said, it's been a couple years since I've upgraded this virtual machine, so it's slightly out of date. And there's our Adobe Reader. It works fine. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead. We're going to hit Start. We're going to turn off. And we are going to turn off. So we're going to shut down the virtual machine now. So you've now just completed from the beginning of installing your own EXSI Server onto VMware Player, learning how to convert virtual machines from either Player or Workstation into EXSI Server, and upgrading your EXSI Server to the more updated version. Feeling kind of complete right now, right? It's good. Okay, I'm going to show you one more thing before we call it a day. We're going to hit Configuration, and then we're going to go to License Features. Alright, now click on License Features and it'll tell you if it's licensed or not. As you can probably see, which we didn't see a pop-up note, it is most likely already licensed. But if you want to double check, just go and click on License Features and it will tell you. If there's no 60-day evaluation, it'll expire, blah blah, and it's still showing your personal edition key, then you're good to go and nothing else needs to be done. So with that, we're going to go back to the main summary. And what the main summary does, it shows you exactly how much of your resources you're currently using on your virtual machine. Now we're going to click Virtual Machines. And with that, we are done. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me on this three-part adventure of installing EXSI Server on VMware Player. Again, this is a perfect way to either, as a power user, just to see what EXSI Server does, or if you're trying to do your VMware certifications, this is a great way of having your own little laboratory without going out there and having to buy the different machines and spending the money to do so. or even if you're a small business IT and seeing if EXSI Server will work in your IT infrastructure. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you go. Thank you for joining me on another segment of This Is How I Do It, and I will see you real soon. Woohoo!